What if the very silence that leaves you anxious is love, not rejection? What if the withdrawal that keeps you up at night, overthinking every word and replaying every moment, isn't because you're not enough, but because you mean too much? You've felt it, haven't you? That ache in your chest when they pull back. That moment when everything seems fine and suddenly they're gone. Emotionally, mentally, sometimes physically, like someone turned off a switch and left you alone in the dark, searching for a reason. You wonder what changed. You blame yourself. You question your worth. And slowly you begin to equate love with confusion. But listen, what if you've misunderstood the silence? What if their distance is not the absence of love, but its most terrified form? This is the part they never teach you. Not all love is loud. Not all affection shows up in warmth and words. Sometimes love wears the mask of distance. Sometimes it hides in the shadows of fear. And sometimes it runs, not because it doesn't feel, but because it feels too much and doesn't know how to hold it. There are people in this world whose nervous systems are built for survival, not intimacy. People who have been taught through pain, through loss, through inconsistent love, that closeness is dangerous. That opening up leads to abandonment. That needing someone only ends in devastation. So when they begin to feel something real, something deep, something that touches the places they've buried for years, they don't move toward it. They freeze. They flee. They shut down. And to you, it feels personal. It feels like rejection, like you weren't worth staying for. But the truth is, it's not about your worth at all. It's about their wounds. They don't pull away because they don't care. They pull away because they care too much and don't know what to do with that feeling. You become the trigger for every past betrayal they never healed from. You become the embodiment of closeness they were never equipped to handle. And instead of leaning in, they retreat, not to punish you, but to protect themselves. But no one tells you that. No one tells you that an avoidance love is quiet, chaotic, and hidden under layers of defense. That their version of, I love you, may look like checking out instead of checking in. That their, I miss you, comes through in delayed texts and subtle reappearances. That their, I'm afraid to lose you, sounds like silence, not confession. And if you're not careful, you will mistake their protection for rejection. You will take it personally. You will internalize their fear as your failure. And you will begin to abandon yourself in the name of being chosen by someone who doesn't know how to stay. But here's the shift. Their distance isn't about you. Let that land. Their emotional retreat is not a reflection of your insufficiency. It's a reflection of their internal war. A war between desire and fear. Between the part of them that wants connection and the part that believes it will destroy them. And when you finally see that, really see it, not as an excuse, but as clarity, something inside you will shift. You'll stop trying to decode their every move. You'll stop chasing them through silence. You'll stop tying your self-worth to their capacity to love. Instead, you'll step into a higher truth. You'll understand that love, true love, isn't always soft and sweet and safe at first. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's broken. Sometimes it's terrified. But that doesn't make it less real. You'll realize that their pulling away isn't them rejecting you. It's them confronting their oldest ghosts. And from that place of awareness, you get to choose. Do you meet them there with compassion and boundaries? Do you hold space without abandoning yourself? Do you rise in your own power instead of shrinking in their confusion? This is your moment. This is the line between illusion and truth. Because the world told you love always feels good. But real love, unhealed, unfinished, unfamiliar love, sometimes hurts before it heals. So if they pulled away, take a breath. This may not be the end. It may be the beginning of the realest love they've ever known and the hardest battle they've ever fought. And if you can see through the silence, you'll finally understand it's not rejection. It's hidden obsession. It's love in its most frightened form. Behind every unread call, behind every moment they turn cold when things get close, there is a war raging within them. Not a war with you, a war with themselves. You see the silence, you feel the distance. But what you don't see is the battlefield inside them. A fight between the heart that wants connection and the mind that fears it. This is the truth no one tells you. Avoidant people aren't emotionally absent because they lack feelings. They're emotionally distant because they feel too much, too deeply, too intensely, too vulnerably. But they were never taught what to do with that kind of emotion. So when it rises, they run, not out of cruelty, but out of conditioning. Not because they don't want love, but because they were wired to fear it. Love, for them, is not safe. It's not soft. It's not steady. It's dangerous. It's unpredictable. It's a territory where they've only known pain, loss, or confusion. So when you show up, open, available, present, they're drawn to you, yes. But they're also terrified of you. You represent something they never learned how to hold: consistency, intimacy, truth. You speak a language they never got to learn, a language called safety. And so they retreat. They don't say what they feel. They don't tell you how much you mean to them. They might even pretend like they don't care, like it doesn't affect them, but it does. God, it does. They're not indifferent. They're overwhelmed, not detached, but drowning, trapped between the longing to be seen and the terror of being exposed. You might think if they cared, they'd try. If they loved me, they'd show it. But love, when filtered through trauma, doesn't always look like love. It looks like defense. It looks like delay. It looks like withdrawal, detachment, even coldness. That's the heartbreaking contradiction. Their distance is not proof they don't care. It's proof that they care more than they can handle. And the closer you get, the more intense the fear becomes. It's not your love that's the problem. It's what it represents, a risk of abandonment, a risk of disappointment, a risk of being truly seen, and maybe still not being enough. So their nervous system does the only thing it knows to do: shut down, push away, protect at all costs. And what you see on the outside, casual attitude, a slow fade, a disappearing act, is actually a survival mechanism. It's not strategy. It's reflex. It's years of programming that taught them closeness equals pain. They're not trying to hurt you. They're trying not to get hurt again. But this is where things get complicated, because while they fight this war inside, you begin one outside. You start to question your worth. You wonder if you're too much or not enough. You analyze their every move, replay conversations, try to fix things by doing more, being more, proving yourself over and over. You try to pull them close while they fight to stay far. And without even realizing it, you begin to abandon yourself in the process. This is the trap. When you misunderstand their inner war, you make it about you. And when you make it about you, you start bleeding from a wound that was never yours to carry. But it's not your job to rescue someone from a battle they're still denying. It's not your purpose to translate silence into love and pain into proof of passion. You must see it for what it is: someone torn between their desire for intimacy and their fear of it. That's not your burden to heal, but it is your power to understand. Because once you understand this war, you stop trying to win it. You stop trying to be the exception to their pattern. You stop waiting for them to choose you over their fear. And instead, you start choosing yourself. You start asking better questions. Does this love expand me or exhaust me? Am I becoming more of myself or less? Was their fear driving my worth, or is my truth leading the way? The war within them is real, but so is your peace. And you don't have to lose yourself trying to be the safe place they never learned to be for themselves. See the war, respect it, but don't let it consume you. Their survival mode isn't a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their past, a past you didn't create and a future only they can rewrite. Here's the part most people don't want to hear: you weren't just drawn to them by accident. That pull you felt, that ache, that intensity, that magnetism, it wasn't random. It was a mirror. They didn't just show you their wounds. They reflected your own. And that's the uncomfortable truth. We often resist the relationships that challenge us the most aren't punishments. They're revelations. You were drawn to their distance because on some level it matched something familiar. Maybe you've learned to chase love. Maybe you've grown up believing love must be earned. Maybe somewhere deep inside, you feel safer with someone who stays just out of reach because you haven't yet felt safe standing fully in your own vulnerability either. It's not weakness. It's not blame. It's recognition. Because the moment you stop pointing fingers and start asking, what is this showing me about myself? That's the moment everything changes. You begin to see the pattern, the emotional highs and lows, the longing for validation, the obsession with being enough for someone who isn't even fully present. And instead of trying to decode their behavior, you turn inward. You start asking the hard questions. Why am I attracted to someone who can't give me what I need? What part of me believes I have to earn love by proving my value? Why do I feel more alive in chaos than in peace? It's not just about them pulling away. It's about what that triggers inside you. Does their silence make you spiral into self-doubt? Does their distance reawaken old fears of being unwanted, forgotten, replaced? Then that's where your healing begins. Not in fixing them, but in meeting yourself. This is the mirror. And when you're brave enough to look into it, you see the version of you that's still waiting for someone else to choose you instead of choosing yourself. You see the version of you that equates love with effort. That confuses attention with affection. That believes if I can just hold on a little longer, maybe this will finally become what I know it could be. But listen carefully, love should not feel like a performance. Love should not feel like emotional starvation. Love should not require you to abandon parts of yourself just to stay close to someone who's afraid to come near. When you stop chasing validation from emotionally unavailable people, you stop reenacting your past. You break the pattern. You step off the stage. You stop being the one who's always trying harder, waiting longer, loving deeper just to feel enough. And instead, you become someone new. Someone who sees red flags and pauses instead of romanticizing them. Someone who can hold space for someone else's fear without letting it become your cage. Someone who chooses peace over potential. Someone who chooses self-respect over emotional chaos. And yes, this kind of growth hurts. It hurts to let go of a connection you've poured so much hope into. It hurts to admit that maybe, just maybe, the love you imagine isn't what's actually in front of you. But it's a necessary pain, because what's on the other side is power. The power to no longer be defined by someone else's inconsistency. The power to hold space for your feelings without being consumed by theirs. The power to choose a different story, a healthier story, a story where you are no longer the one chasing someone who's only halfway in. They were your mirror. Yes. But now the reflection shifts. Now, you're not looking for someone to reflect your wounds back to you. You're becoming someone who reflects your healing instead. You are becoming someone who no longer finds familiarity in emotional distance. You are becoming someone who feels at home in emotional presence. You are becoming someone who doesn't just want love, but is finally ready to receive it. And you know what's even more powerful? When you stop needing to be chosen by those who withhold, you become the one who does the choosing. You step into your own authority. You set new standards. You write new rules. And in doing so, you don't just transform your relationships, you transform yourself. Love doesn't always arrive dressed in flowers and certainty. Sometimes it shows up trembling. Sometimes it shows up wearing armor. Sometimes it doesn't look like love at all. You've been taught that love is obvious, that it's words spoken, promises made, arms open. You've been taught that when someone loves you, it's clear, undeniable. But that's only one version of love. There's another kind. The kind that was never taught how to express itself. The kind that never felt safe to speak. The kind that confuses connection with vulnerability and vulnerability with danger. This kind of love doesn't always feel like love. It feels like mixed signals. It feels like long silences and uncertain eyes. It feels I miss you, turning into I need space. It feels like being pulled close only to be pushed away again. And you standing there heart wide open to feel the H of that confusion. You start to think if they loved me, it wouldn't feel like this. If I mattered, I wouldn't have to guess. But here's the cruel paradox. Some people love in ways that don't look like love. They don't say, I miss you, because that would mean admitting need. They don't say, I love you, because love was always followed by pain in their world. They don't let you in. Not because you're not worthy, but because they never learned how to let themselves be held. So instead, they love in disguise. They love through a carefully timed message after days of silence. They love through checking in on something small, something seemingly random, just to feel close without being obvious. They love by pulling away when the feelings become too strong, hoping you'll understand without them having to explain. And while it may look like detachment, it's really a desperate attempt to manage the fire inside them. A fire that says, I care about you so much it terrifies me. A fire that screams, don't get too close. I might lose myself again. That's why their love is confusing. Because it's built on fear, not freedom. It's masked in protection, not presence. But here's the danger when you mistake their fear, base love for rejection. You begin shrinking yourself to stay close. You begin interpreting every withdrawal as a message about your worth. You start changing your tone, your truth, your timing just to avoid triggering their escape. You start chasing crumbs and calling it connection. But that's not love. That's survival. And while their love may be real, may be deep, may be raw beneath the surface, love that is always hidden, always delayed, always conditional on comfort becomes a prison for your soul. You deserve love that doesn't hide behind silence. You deserve love that doesn't punish you for showing up fully. You deserve love that isn't afraid of itself. Because love that's buried beneath layers of fear will always ask you to dig, to prove, to earn. And love should never make you feel like you're hard to love. This is the moment you must get honest with yourself. Are you seeing their truth, or are you seeing your hope? Are you holding on to what's real, or what might be? If only they change. Yes, some people love in disguise. Yes, their silence can be a form of affection twisted by trauma. Yes, it's possible to care so deeply and still not know how to stay. But that doesn't mean you have to live in confusion. Their hidden love is not your obligation to decode. Because while they may be loving the only way they know how, you get to choose what kind of love you're willing to receive. And this is the bold truth. If you have to constantly guess whether you're loved, if love only shows up after you pull away, if affection always feels like a negotiation, never a choice, if that's not your home, that's not your peace. And no matter how deep their feelings run, if they can't meet you in the open, it's okay to let go of love that only knows how to hide, because the love you deserve won't need to wear a disguise. There is a moment, quiet, clear, undeniable, when something inside you wakes up. It doesn't scream, it doesn't panic. It simply sees the pattern for what it is, sees the emotional roller coaster you've been riding on, sees the truth that's been whispering beneath the chaos all along. This isn't about you. It was never about your worth, never about how lovable you are, never about how much effort you gave, how carefully you chose your words, how patient you were with their silence. No amount of softness can soften someone's fear of closeness. No amount of chasing can reach someone hiding behind emotional walls they built long before you arrived. And when that truth finally lands, not just in your mind, but in your bones, you stop begging for clarity. You stop over-explaining your heart to someone who refuses to speak theirs. You stop measuring your value by someone else's emotional availability. That is the power of awareness. It breaks the illusion. It shatters the story that says, if I just love them harder, they'll heal. Awareness is not cold. It's not detached. It's not bitter. It's the opposite. It's the most compassionate thing you can ever give yourself, because awareness lets you see them with truth and you with mercy. You begin to understand that their avoidance is not a reflection of how much you matter. It's a reflection of what they're still running from. It's a trauma response, not a character judgment. And in that awareness, something shifts inside you. You stop internalizing their patterns. You stop making their fear your responsibility. You stop trying to fix what was never yours to carry in the first place. And here's the beautiful, brutal truth. When you become aware, you reclaim your power. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop pleading for love in a language that keeps leaving you lost in translation. Awareness gives you permission to pause and ask the question that changes everything. Is this connection expanding me, or is it draining me? You begin to notice how often you're over-functioning, how often you're the one initiating, how often you feel anxious after opening up, wondering if you said too much or held on too tightly. And then you realize you've been trying to hold space for both your emotions and their fears. You've been walking on emotional eggshells, not to keep peace, but to keep them from pulling away. That's not connection, that's survival. And real love cannot grow in survival mode. Awareness isn't just clarity, it's sovereignty. It's the freedom to no longer be ruled by someone else's emotional limitations. It's the realization that while you can have compassion for their pain, you don't have to become collateral damage in their process. You can care and still choose yourself. You can empathize and still walk away. You can love deeply and still say, this isn't enough. That's the beauty of awareness. It doesn't require you to stop feeling. It simply asks you to stop abandoning yourself in the process. Because the longer you make their avoidance mean something about you, the longer you keep yourself in emotional limbo, half alive, half loved, half free. But when you stand in awareness, you rise. You stop making excuses for someone else's emotional absence. You stop romanticizing the chase. You stop holding on to potential like it's proof of love. And instead, you look around and ask, what's real? What's consistent? What's mutual? That's your new standard. That's your new compass. That's the power of being fully awake to what is, not lost in what you hope it could be. Because the truth is this, love shouldn't leave you guessing. It shouldn't make you beg for crumbs. It shouldn't feel like a test you keep failing. You were never too much. You were just too alive for someone afraid to feel. Too real for someone who hides behind emotional armor. Too open for someone who only knows how to retreat. So choose to see clearly. Choose to honor your awareness. Choose to walk in your worth. Because once you awaken to the truth, you can never go back to begging for love in the dark. This isn't just about them. This isn't just about their silence, their distance, their fear. It's time to turn the lens inward because every connection we form, especially the ones that confuse or hurt us, holds up a mirror. And the one you've been staring into, the avoidant, the distant, the emotionally unavailable one, they're showing you something about you. And if you're willing to be honest with yourself, it might change everything. Ask yourself this, why do you stay drawn to someone who keeps pulling away? Why does their coldness feel familiar? Why does their absence activate something so deep in you that it feels like truth? What are you chasing? Because this isn't just about being in love. This is about patterns, wounds, imprints left behind by the people who taught you, either directly or silently, what love was supposed to feel like. And for some of us, love was chaos. It was conditional. It was a moving target we were trained to run after, hoping if we could just do enough, say enough, be enough, maybe we'd finally be chosen. So we learned to wait, to fix, to read between the lines and call it intimacy, to call inconsistency mystery, to call emotional starvation depth, to call hot and cold chemistry. But none of that is love. It's survival. It's a nervous system responding to what's familiar, not what's healthy. So when someone avoidant enters your life, someone who keeps their guard up, who gives just enough to keep you close but never enough to let you all the way in, something you recognize is it, not because it's right, but because it's what your inner child learned to normalize. And that realization, it's not meant to shame you. It's meant to free you. Because the second you see it, you're no longer trapped by it. You realize you've been running a race you were never meant to win, trying to earn love from people who are too afraid to give it, trying to become enough for someone who can't even hold their own emotions, let alone yours. But now, you have a choice. You can keep repeating the cycle, chasing love in all the wrong places, playing the role of the healer, the fixer, the one who understands at the cost of your own peace. Or you can wake up. You can see the pattern for what it is, a mirror, a lesson, a call to finally stop seeking in others what haven't yet fully claimed in yourself. Because here's the hardest truth. You can't force someone to choose you, but you can stop choosing people who never will. You can't make someone safe, but you can stop calling unsafe love your home. You can't heal someone's fear of intimacy because you can't heal the part of you that keeps mistaking emotional unavailability for depth. You've been so focused on figuring them out, on trying to understand their wounds, their patterns, their triggers, that you forgot to turn inward and ask, gosh, what part of me still thinks love is something I have to earn? What part of me still feels at home in uncertainty? Why do I feel more alive in the chase than in calm, stable connection? Why do I mistake emotional friction for chemistry? Because this journey, it's not just about avoiding avoidance. It's about returning to yourself, to the part of you that's been silently screaming for something more. Not louder love, but a safer love, a cleaner love, a steady, present available love, love that doesn't confuse you, love that doesn't make you prove your worth every time you want to feel held. And maybe, just maybe, the avoidant didn't come into your life to be your forever. Maybe they came to show you the parts of yourself that are still waiting to be seen by you. This is your mirror. What you do with it is up to you. But don't look away. Don't go back to sleep. Don't call dysfunction destiny just because it feels familiar. Instead, look deeper, not into them, but into you and ask, because what kind of love am I ready to receive? What kind of love am I willing to give myself first? Because the moment you answer that with clarity and courage, everything begins to change. You've waited long enough. Waited for answers that never came. Waited for clarity from someone too afraid to give it. Waited in the gaps between messages, in the pauses between affection, in the hollow spaces where intimacy was supposed to grow. But how much longer will you wait? You've tried, you've held space, practiced patience, rationalized distance, convinced yourself that love sometimes looks like confusion. You've explained their behavior to others like it was your job to translate pain into poetry. You've told yourself they just need time. They're scared. If I just love them enough, they'll stay. But now you know the truth. Love doesn't grow in silence. Love doesn't survive on emotional starvation. Love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself for someone else's comfort. And maybe they do care. Maybe somewhere behind the armor, beneath the avoidance, under the emotional shutdown, they love you in their own way. But love that hides behind fear isn't love that can hold you. And you're not here to be half held. You're not here to be almost chosen. You're not here to be a second home to someone who won't even open the door. This is your line in the sand, because there comes a moment when your silence becomes betrayal. Not of them, but of you. There comes a moment when your waiting turns into self-abandonment, when understanding becomes enabling, when compassion becomes self-erasure. And that moment is now. You don't need to yell. You don't need revenge. You don't need to prove anything, but you do need to decide to stop shrinking so someone else doesn't feel overwhelmed, to stop accepting less than what your soul knows it deserves, to stop confusing chaos for connection or fear for depth. This is your life. This is your heart. This is your one shot to rise above the patterns that have kept you chasing people who never had the capacity to truly hold you. You weren't born to decode someone else's emotional maze. You weren't created to fit into spaces too small for your truth. You weren't built to beg for what should be freely given. You were born to rise, to heal, to take up space, to be loved by someone who meets you with open hands, not closed doors. Someone who doesn't disappear when it gets real, but leans in. Someone who doesn't see your emotions as too much, but as honesty. Someone who sees your heart and says, yes, I choose you fully. But before that person can show up, you have to choose you. That's a real shift. That's the moment the cycle breaks. When you stop asking, why don't they love me? And you start asking, why do I keep loving those who don't show up? When you stop making excuses for someone else's fear and start honoring your own worth. So this is your call, not a chase, not a fix, not to stay in something that continues to drain you. This is your call to rise beyond the silence, to step back from the confusion and stand in clarity, to stop translating mixed signals and start trusting your inner voice, the one that's been whispering, you deserve more than this, because you do. You deserve presence, you deserve peace, you deserve a love that doesn't ask you to prove, perform, or pretend. And if they come back, if they change, if they fight their fear, let it be their choice. Let it be their journey. But don't put your life on hold waiting for someone else to figure out what you've already known in your soul. You're not here to be the lesson. You're here to be the light. So stand tall, speak your truth, reclaim your energy from the places you once poured it to freely, and walk away, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in power. Because the most revolutionary thing you can do after being silenced, dismissed, or avoided is to choose yourself so fiercely that the silence is no longer painful, it's peaceful. You've carried the weight long enough. Now it's time to rise.